So you have spoken about a kind of meaning crisis that we're going through,
Mm-hmm.
but it feels like since since we invented sex and death, we broadly speaking, we've been searching for a kind of meaning. So it feels like human civilization has been going through a meaning crisis of different flavors throughout its history. Why is how is this particular meaning crisis different, or is it really a crisis and it wasn't previously? What's your sense?
A lot of human history, there wasn't so much a meaning crisis. There was just a like food and not getting eaten by bears crisis, right? Once you get to a point where you can make food, there was the like not getting killed by other humans crisis. So sitting around wondering what is it all about is actually a relatively recent luxury. Um, and to some extent, the meaning crisis coming out of that is precisely because, well, not precisely because I believe that meaning is the consequence of when we make consequential decisions. It's tied to agency, right? When we make consequential decisions, that generates meaning. So if we make a lot of decisions, but we don't see the consequences of them, then it feels like, what was the point?
Mhm.
Right? But if there's all these big things happening, but we're just along for the ride, then it also does not feel very meaningful. Meaning, as far as I can tell, this is my working definition circa 2021, is generally the result of a person making a consequential decision, acting on it, and then seeing the consequences of it. So historically, just when humans are in survival mode, you're making consequential decisions all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So there's not a lack of meaning because like you either got eaten or you didn't, right? You got some food and that's great. You feel good. Like these are all consequential decisions. Only in, the post fossil fuel and industrial revolution could we create a massive leisure class. I could sit around not being threatened by bears, not starving to death, making decisions somewhat, but a lot of times not seeing the consequences of any decisions they make. The general sort of sense of anomie, I think this is the French term for it, in the wake of the consumer society, in the wake of mass media telling everyone, hey, choosing between Hermes and Chanel is a meaningful decision. No, it's not.
I don't know what either of those mean.
Oh, they're high-end luxury purses and crap like that.
Nice.
But the point is that we give people the idea that consumption is meaning, that making a choice of this team versus that team, spectating has meaning. So we produce all of these different things that are as if meaning, right? But really making a decision that has no consequences for us. And so that creates the meaning crisis.
Well, you're saying choosing between Chanel and the other one has no consequence. I mean, why is one more meaningful than the other?
It's not that it's more meaningful than the other. It's that you make a decision between these two brands and you're told this brand will make me look better in front of other people. If I buy this brand of car, if I wear that brand of apparel, right? The idea, like a lot of the decisions we make are around consumption, but consumption by itself doesn't actually yield meaning. Gaining social status does provide meaning. So that's why in this era of abundant production, we so many things turn into status games. The NFT kind of explosion is a similar kind of thing. Everywhere there are status games because we just have so much excess production.
But aren't those status games a source of meaning? Like, why do the games we play have to be grounded in physical reality like they are when you're trying to run away from lions? Why can't we, in this virtuality world, on social media, why can't we play the games on social media, even the dark ones?
Right, we can.
But you're saying that's creating a meaning crisis.
Well, there's a meaning crisis in that there's two aspects of it. Number one, playing those kinds of status games oftentimes requires destroying the planet because it ties to consumption, consuming the latest and greatest version of a thing, buying the latest limited edition sneaker and throwing out all the old ones. Maybe it keeps in the old ones, but the amount of sneakers we have to cut up and destroy every year to create artificial scarcity for the next generation, right? This is kind of stuff that's not great. It's not great at all. So conspicuous consumption fueling status games is really bad for the planet, not sustainable. The second thing is you can play these kinds of status games, but then what it does is it renders you captured to the virtual environment. The status games that the really wealthy people are playing are all around the hard resources, where they're going to build the factories. They're going to have the fuel and the rare earths to make the next generation of robots. They're then going to run circles around you and your children. So that's another reason not to play those virtual status games.
So you're saying ultimately the big picture game is won by people who have access or control over actual hard resources. So you don't see a society where most of the games are played in the virtual space.
They'll be captured in the physical space. It all builds. It's just like the stack of human being, right? If you only play the game at the cultural and the intellectual level, then the people with the hard resources and access to layer 0 physical are going to own you.
But isn't money not connected to, or less and less connected to hard resources, and money still seems to work? It's a virtual technology.
There's different kinds of money. Part of the reason that some of the stuff is able to go a little unhinged is because the big sovereignties where one spends money and uses money and plays money games and inflates money, their ability to adjudicate the physical resources and hard resources and land and things like that, those have not been challenged in a very long time.
So, we went off the gold standard. Most money is not connected to physical resources. It's an idea. And that idea is very closely connected to status. So why?
But it's also tied to it's actually tied to law. It is tied to some physical hard things. So you have to pay your taxes.
Yes. So it's always at the end going to be connected to the blockchain of physical reality. So in the case of law and taxes, it's connected to government, and government is what? Violence is the. I'm playing
the monopoly on violence
of devil's advocates here. I'm popping one devil off the stack at a time. Isn't ultimately, of course, it'll be connected to physical reality, but just because people control the physical reality doesn't mean the status. LeBron James, in theory, could make more money than the owners of the teams, in theory. And to me, that's a virtual idea. So somebody else constructed a game, and now you're playing in the space of virtual, in the virtual space of the game. And so it just feels like there could be games where status, we build realities that give us meaning in the virtual space. Like I can imagine such things being possible.
Oh yeah, okay. So I think I see what you're saying there with the idea there. I mean, we'll take the LeBron James side and put in some YouTube influencer.
Yes, sure.
Right. So the YouTube influencer, it is status games, but at a certain level, it precipitates into real dollars and into you look at Mr. Beast, right? Yeah. He's sending off $500,000 worth of fireworks or something, right? On a YouTube video.
And also saving, saving trees and so on.
Sure, right. They're trying to plant 1 million trees with Mark Rober or whatever it was. Yeah. It's not that those kinds of games can't lead to real consequences. It's that for the vast majority of people in consumer culture, they are incented by I would say mostly I'm thinking about middle-class consumers. They're incented by advertisements. They're incented by their mimetic environment to treat the purchasing of certain things, the need to buy the latest model of whatever, the need to appear however, the need to pursue status games as a driver of meaning. And my point would be that it's a very hollow driver of meaning. And that is what creates a meaning crisis. Because at the end of the day, it's like eating a lot of empty calories. Right? Yeah, it tasted good going down. It's a lot of sugar, but man, it was not enough protein to help build your muscles. And you kind of feel that in your gut. And I think so all the stuff aside and setting aside our discussion on currency, which I hope we get back to, that's what I mean about the meaning crisis, part of it being created by the fact that we're not encouraged to have more and more direct relationships. We're actually alienated from relating to even our family members sometimes, right? We're encouraged to relate to brands. We're encouraged to relate to these kinds of things that then tell us to do things that are really of low consequence. And that's where the meaning crisis comes from.
So the role of technology in this, so there's somebody you mentioned who's Jacques Ellul. His view of technology, he warns about the towering piles of technique, which I guess is a broad idea of technology.
Yes.
So I think, correct me if I'm wrong, for him, technology is bad, moving away from human nature, and it's ultimately is destructive. My question, broadly speaking, this meaning crisis, what are the pros and cons of technology? Can it be a good?
Yeah, I think it can be. I certainly draw on some of Ellul's ideas, and I think some of them are pretty good. But the way he defines technique is, also Simondon as well. I mean, he speaks to the general mentality of efficiency.
Yeah.
Homogenized processes, homogenized production, homogenized labor to produce homogenized artifacts that then are not actually, they don't sit well in the environment. So it's essentially, you can think of it as the antonym of craft. Whereas a craftsman will come to, a problem, maybe a piece of wood, and then make it into a chair. It may be a site to build a house or build a stable or build, whatever. And they will consider how to bring various things in to build something well contextualized that's in right relationship with that environment. But the way we have driven technology over the last 100, 150 years is not that at all. It is, how can we, make sure the input materials are homogenized, cut to the same size, diluted and doped to exactly the right alloy concentrations? How do we create machines that then consume exactly the right kind of energy to be able to run at this high speed to stamp out the same parts, which then go out the door? Everyone gets the same Tickle Me Elmo. And the reason why everyone wants it is because we have broadcast that tells everyone this is the cool thing. So we homogenize demand, right? And we're like Baudrillard, and other critiques of modernity coming from that direction, the situationalists as well. It's that their point is that at this point in time, consumption is the thing that drives a lot of the economic stuff, not the need, but the need to consume and build status games on top. So we have homogenized. When we discovered, I think this is really like Bernays and stuff, right? In the early 20th century, we discovered we can create demand, we can create desire in a way that was not possible before because of broadcast media. And not only do we create desire, we don't create desire for each person to connect to some bespoke thing to build a relationship with their neighbor or their spouse. We are telling them, you need to consume this brand. You need to drive this vehicle. You got to listen to this music. Have you heard this? Have you seen this movie? Right? So creating homogenized demand makes it really cheap to create homogenized product. And now you have economics of scale. So we make the same Tickle Me Elmo, give it to all the kids, and all the kids are like, hey, I got a Tickle Me Elmo, right? So this is ultimately where this ties in then to runaway hypercapitalism, is that capitalism is always looking for growth. It's always looking for growth, and growth only happens at the margins. So you have to squeeze more and more demand out. You got to make it cheaper and cheaper to make the same thing, but tell everyone they're still getting meaning from it. You're still like, this is still your Tickle Me Elmo, right? And we see little bits of this critiques of this dripping in popular culture. You see it sometimes. It's when Buzz Lightyear walks into the thing. He's like, oh my God, at the toy store, I'm just a toy. Like there's there's hundreds of other Buzz Lightyears just like me, right? That is, I think, a fun Pixar critique on this homogenization dynamic.